Lavora Barnes, our first guest, is the chair of the Michigan Democratic Party. She was elected in February of 2019 and is the first black woman to hold this post. She joins us once again now on the MegaCast as we are heading into a very important and what seems like it's going to be a very competitive political year once again. Lavora, thanks for being with us today.
Great to be back with you guys. Good to see you.
So let's start off with what we were talking about before the break. That last article I read from our friends over at the Detroit Free Press about the Michigan Independent Citizens Redistricting Commission. There's a lot of due frustration that is being tossed their way as there have been a number of delays. There's been a lot of reported inefficiencies in their process, as well as among some of the commissioners themselves. What's the Michigan Democratic Party's take on what has been happening so far with the Michigan Independent Citizens Redistricting Commission? Because on one hand, this is, at least seems like it is the best path forward for Michigan voters to be avoiding gerrymandering, whether it be Democrat or Republican now and in the future. But on the other hand, it's been a very messy process through their first set of redistricting maps.
It's funny. This is truly sausage making, right? Folks are actually watching this happen as it goes. And, you know, we were proud to support the idea of the commission when it was working its way through the voters. And we are really thrilled that this commission is in place, and we support the work that they're doing. And it's so important that we draw these lines fairly and without the influence of the elected officials who would sit in these districts once they are drawn. It has been frustrating to watch. I understand that. And it's probably frustrating to them for this process to draw out the way it is. It is tough work drawing districts, and it's even tougher work drawing districts publicly together as a group instead of individually. And I think that they just need probably to just get this process a little bit tighter so that they can move through this process faster. I would love to see them, you know, taking a look at partisan fairness while they're drawing. I think that the plan right now is for them to go back and look at partisan fairness after they've drawn some of these maps. It makes more sense to me to be looking at it while you're drawing the map so that you're drawing these maps fairly as you go along. But we're watching it closely. We've got lots of our members participating in public comment, and we'll continue to do that. And we look forward to seeing what these fair maps look like when they're finished.
And you have to expect some hiccups, especially when a lot of the data that they rely on to make a lot of these decisions is based off of the most updated U.S. Census data. In this case, that data was due to be sent out to these powers that be, including commissions like this, and to state legislatures across the union on April 1st. And what ended up happening is that deadline was missed by the Census Bureau due to a number of factors, mostly surrounding the COVID-19 pandemic, as is claimed by the Census Bureau. And by the time that data was out, it's 5 months plus later, it's August 12th. That really makes for a difficult situation here. But the fact of the matter is they do have those numbers. They do have a month after those numbers are out there, and that they have time to deliberate on them and look them over and make at least initial drawings before that 45-day public comment period is opened up. And so they are able to take a look at those things, such as political lines in these certain areas, at least among those that did report their political affiliations in the U.S. Census Bureau or through other means. So at this moment in time, they have plenty of that data to move forward, especially right now, given the situation that we're in and the last few political cycles that we've had through the gubernatorial election, certainly the 2020 presidential election. And with the data we've seen so far from the U.S. Census Bureau that's reporting such changes in the demographics of a lot of our communities with growing diversity, how much more important now is it for a commission like the Michigan Independent Citizens Redistricting Commission to make sure that they get this right, but get it right in a timely manner as we approach a major election season here in the state of Michigan?
It's so important. We've been through so many cycles under these gerrymandered maps that were drawn during after that 2010 census. And, you know, if you look at the numbers, you see Democrats winning statewide. But then as you get down to legislative districts, the disparity is great. And that is because of how these maps were gerrymandered to favor Republicans. And we are hoping right now for fair maps. That's all we're asking for. We're not asking them to draw, although I would love it if they did draw a bunch of Democratic maps. But I want fair maps, right? I want to make sure that when we run the next time, we're running under some fair circumstances, that the finger's not on the scale for either one party or the other. This group of folks, these group of citizens who have stepped up to do this work, I'm thrilled that they're doing it. And I know that in the end, with the help of the terrific Secretary of State staff who's supporting them, they're going to come up with some good maps. But we've got to be patient with them, and we've got to provide input to them so they know what the people of Michigan want, which is why we're encouraging folks to come out, to show up for the public comment, to send in maps that they've drawn themselves, maps that they think would be fair to their communities, maps that represent their communities of interest, maps that represent partisan fairness, to help this commission do the work that they're trying to get done, because they don't have a lot of time to get it done. We need to follow these deadlines as closely as possible so that we are ready to run elections, because 2022 will be here before you know it.
We're joined by Lavora Barnes. She is the chair of the Michigan Democratic Party, with us today on the MegaCast, and continuing on the issue of redistricting and on gerrymandering. There was an article that I mentioned before from the Detroit Free Press that centered around Robert Davis, a man from Highland Park, that is suing the Michigan Independent Citizens Redistricting Commission and petitioning the Supreme Court to require that the commission meet both its September 1st and November 1st deadlines. Is the Michigan Democratic Party in line with that argument? Does the party hope and really, or maybe even in a more severe case, demand that these deadlines are made as close as possible? Because as you said, that severely impacts the 2022 election cycle, which does begin late in 2021 with primaries.
It does begin pretty quickly here. And we want very much to see these maps drawn in a timely manner. More important to me, though, is that they are drawn fair, and that the Redistricting Commission takes the time they need to make sure that they are drawing good, fair maps for us. And if that means they need to get the Supreme Court to give them more time to draw those maps, that's what they should be asking the Supreme Court to do. And I believe that's what the court will do when it becomes apparent that they cannot meet these deadlines.
We're joined by Lavora Barnes. She is the chair of the Michigan Democratic Party, with us today on the MegaCast. And on the issue of voting rights, it's become more of a hot-button issue across the United States over the past year, certainly since the conclusion of the 2020 presidential election, with what began as a battle after that in Georgia and in other states that were highly contested between former President Donald Trump and current President Joe Biden. We've seen a number of different bills pop up, particularly the one that's been talked about most are the voting bills in the state of Texas, at least as of late. In Michigan, Republicans have launched Secure My Vote, Secure MI Vote drive to reform Michigan election laws, launching a petition to drive tighter state voting laws following that combative 2020 election, where many of them, of those in the Republican Party, claim that there was fraud in the state of Michigan, although those claims have, by and large, or entirely been unsubstantiated. What are your thoughts on these drives to further secure, so to speak, the voting laws in the state of Michigan and in other places, as opposed to making it easier for people to have access to the vote, but also do so legally?
You know, in overwhelming numbers in 2018, the voters of Michigan decided to make it easier for folks to vote, to give folks better access to the ballot. And this effort is to overturn that clear vote that the Michigan voters made in 2018. I've said this so many times, but it's what the Republicans' playbook seems to be, that first they lose and then they lie, that big lie about what happened in 2020, and then they try to change the rules. They cheat. And this is the next step in that cheat. This is a deceptive effort to overturn what the people of Michigan decided they wanted, and to even go even further backwards in terms of access to the ballot. I believe it to be a constitutional violation of rights. I think that we're putting barriers to voting that should not be there, and that our Constitution protects voters from having in their way. We have a right to vote, we have a freedom to vote, and we should be allowing our folks to have access to that ballot without these barriers that the Republicans want to throw up in front of them.
We're joined by Lavora Barnes. She is the chair of the Michigan Democratic Party, with us on the MegaCast. Just a little bit of information about what this Secure My Vote initiative from the Michigan Republican Party would do. According to the outline shared with Bridge Michigan magazine, the initiative would require in-person voters to present a photo ID. Acceptable forms would be a driver's license, state ID card, passport, military ID, tribal ID, or student ID issued by a university, junior college, or community college. It would require require voters applying for an absentee ballot to include their driver's license or state ID number along with the last 4 digits of their social security number. It would prohibit the Secretary of State and local election clerks from sending absentee ballot applications to voters who did not request them specifically. Prohibit outside corporate entities, and closed quote, from funding Michigan elections, and create a new, quote, voter access fund with $3 million to provide free state ID cards to residents who may struggle to obtain one because of financial hardships. So on one hand, these are new restrictions. They would, in this case, should any of these initiatives ultimately become law in the state of Michigan, would in some ways make the process of getting voters to the polls and having their votes be counted more difficult. But on the other hand, there are some proposals in this initiative, such as those $3 million to help provide state IDs, that would provide some of those necessary materials to people that may not have access to be able to get state IDs or to get a driver's license because of financial hardships or others that are in place. So is there a balance here where we can provide greater security to our election, but also provide greater freedom and access to elections for those that qualify and maybe have had issues with access to getting their votes heard in past elections?
So what this proposal would do is it suggests to folks that there's something wrong with our elections that needs to be fixed, that our elections aren't already secure, that we don't already have effective voter IDs and ID laws in place that work. The fact of the matter is that our elections are secure. We just ran the biggest, most secure election in 2020 that we've ever run because of our terrific, nonpartisan, Republican and Democratic clerks all over the state who do this work and do it well, because of our terrific Secretary of State, who is the best in the nation at what she does, and she does it well. We have voter ID laws already that work. We know that the idea here is to scare people, to make people think that there is something wrong with the way our elections work, that there's something wrong with receiving an absentee ballot application in the mail, when in fact there is nothing. It isn't about securing our elections. It's about sowing seeds of doubt about our elections so that they can continue the big lie, which is that there was something wrong with the 2020 election. And when they lose again, they're going to say there was something wrong with that election as well.
And it's something that we see, in all fairness, it's something that we see across the aisle, whether it's in 2020 with the big lie following the results of the 2020 election, which were substantiated state to state and federally, and the results were clear. Joe Biden won through all the legal means that were in place, the election over Donald J. Trump. But we had similar situations in 2016, those being significantly less drastic, I would say, than the results and the qualms with the 2020 election result, where it was mostly about questions of the efficacy of the Electoral College. But no matter what's going to happen, one side's going to be the winner, one side of the aisle is going to be the loser, and the other side that doesn't get what they want out of an election is going to be frustrated. That being said, we can find balance and without restricting people and their ability to vote, because it is the hallmark of our political system, not only here in the state of Michigan, but throughout the Republic. We're joined by Lavora Barnes, the chair of the Michigan Democratic Party, with us on the MegaCast. And Lavora, just a few more minutes with you today. So I want to talk about an issue that's growing in its importance to a lot of people, and the severity and the urgency of addressing this issue at a national level, and that is the status and the danger behind and the growing concern about the potential repeal of Roe versus Wade at the federal level through the Supreme Court. And that would affect people in the state of Michigan as well, because if that federal precedent were to be removed by the Supreme Court, and it is in some ways expected that is impending sometime in the next year or so, that laws at the state level, because of the Constitution being that any powers not given to not provided through the federal government then fall onto the state, would then fall back to a Michigan law from the 1930s that of course bans abortions in the state of Michigan. How much of a major issue, or at what stage is this major issue? Is this issue a major issue to the Michigan Democratic Party? Is it one of your top priorities right now? Is it a growing priority as we approach potentially the repeal of Roe versus Wade at the federal level?
Yeah, we as a party believe in a woman's fundamental right to govern her own body and make choices about it without interference of government or elected officials. We continue to believe that. I think yesterday you saw our governor step up and say it's time to repeal those Those laws that are on the books here in Michigan, we support that. We want those laws repealed. Erica Geist, Senator Geist, has legislation to do that, and we encourage the legislature to move on that legislation and repeal this. This is an issue that is fundamental to us as women, to me as a mother and a grandmother. I believe so much that this right is important for us to fight for, and we will fight for it. You saw women step up and stand up after the 2016 election, and you're going to see us do it again. We will not take this sitting down. We're going to make changes in state legislatures that make sure that we can protect this right, and it in many ways will become a cry from all of us that we will join together arm in arm and fight this in any way we have to.